I know you're out there. I know you're out there. I know you're out there.
Welcome to another edition of the Sports Buffet.
Here is your host, Mr. West.
Yes, welcome and good afternoon or evening, depending on what side of the country you are located on. This is the Sport Buffet with Matt West. Only problem is I can't find Matt West. He left the studio about 15 minutes ago, said he was coming back. And so hopefully we will have our host soon. But in the meantime, we got a show to do. So if you would like to call into the show and have a opinion on what we're talking about or something that's gone on your mind like to discuss with us on the air, feel free to give us a call. It's 702-475-5946. Once again, that number is 702-475-5946. We'd be happy to hear what's going on in your world. Well, with no Matt West, we will trudge on. No matter, no problem. I am your host, Aaron the Iceman, and we are live on the Aristocrat Sports Network, aristocratsportsnet.com. Great up-and-coming internet radio station that we're happy to be a part of. John Sirocco, the CEO over there, is definitely doing big things, and so we are very much excited to be a part of that, and we're very much excited to be coming to you on live stream YouTube and also on Aristocrat Sportsnet. Also, check us out on www.thesportbuffet.com. Once again, thesportbuffet.com. And like I said, call us in 702-475-5946. Once again, 702-475-5946. Let's go ahead and dive into the topics here. First one that comes to mind, obviously, it's Friday. And in the NBA season, at this point in the season, it's NBA All-Star Weekend, which I know that listeners of the show know that I'm not quite the biggest fan of the NBA, but no matter, All-Star Weekend is pretty fun, you know, when you were growing up, to see all the guys that you look up to, all the superstars, you know, all together in one building to play for two teams, to play for an exhibition. You know, it's a fun time. Everybody has, you know, a good time. Obviously, they're not playing religiously. They're not playing as hard as normal on any given regular season game, but you know, used to be fun, used to be a good time. When I remember growing up, when I still had an affinity for the NBA, I remember watching, you know, guys like Allen Iverson and, you know, Michael Jordan and, you know, the dunk contest, et cetera, the 3-point contest. But, you know, I got to say that I feel that NBA All-Star Weekend, in my eyes, even through my biased eyes, is really, I feel like it's just lost its luster, and it's not really the same showcase or exhibition that it used to be. You know, it just seems like, you know, it's just another weekend in the NBA. You know, it's kind of like a nice little day off stretch, you know, where, you know, the players don't have to play because most of them aren't playing through, you know, various needs or injuries, rest, etc., what have you. But, you know, the NBA All-Star Game, you know, it never had the inspiration to play, but it always felt like those guys still wanted to be there back in the late 90s, early 90s, you know, Michael Jordan, obviously. I felt like the dunk contest was, you know, something that was, you know, a national showcase of the greatest talents in the NBA. And I don't feel like that's the case anymore. No disrespect to Victor Oladipo and, you know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of the Greek guy from the Milwaukee Bucks. No disrespect to those guys, but you know, they're not the LeBron James. They're not the Kevin Durants that everybody's dying to see, and we may never see in our sports lifetime in the dunk contest for whatever reason, whether they think it's injury or they think it's legacy tarnishing, or you know, I don't know what's going on through their minds, but you know, I feel almost as if LeBron and Kevin Durant have a duty to the fans to get out there, put on a show for the fans who want to see it. We all know we've seen LeBron's dunks in real time, and we can only imagine what he would do if he had time to prepare and he could use props. I mean, we've seen most things: jumping out of cars, jumping over people. Just short of parachuting in from an airplane, we've seen pretty much a lot of dunks. But I feel like LeBron and Kevin Durant, and maybe even to an extent Russell Westbrook, guys like that could really elevate this contest into what it used to be. And Nate Robinson, for a while, when he was kind of the Spud Webb of this era, he jolted it. The electricity for a little while, got kind of fans semi-interested again, because we saw the little guy who kind of had that Spud Webb vibe, where he's, maybe not supposed to dunk, but he has deceptive hops. But, I do like the 3-point contest, and I think that that's definitely something that hasn't really lost its luster. But, at the same time, when we're talking about, the 3-point contest and the dunks, there's only one way to shoot a three. So, you'll lose kind of the casual fan, or the fan that's really only, tuned in to see some excitement. The 3-point contest definitely doesn't provide that excitement. I will say that I do like, from time to time, when they involve the legend and the WNBA player in the skills competition, the 3-point half-court shot competition. Those are pretty fun to watch. But overall, in my opinion, I think the NBA All-Star Weekend has definitely lost its luster. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if I'm in New York City this weekend, it would be something that I'd definitely be interested in. But I think as a fan out here on the West Coast, and the fact that we're 3 hours behind, so the game will probably come on about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm not going to lose sleep over missing it, I'll tell you that. So, but, it's great to see, the NBA coming together and having their All-Star Weekend. And I know it's good for the fans and the hardcore fans of the NBA, but I think that they need to, as a collective unit, figure out a way to almost like come together like what the MLB did, and kind of put some kind of emphasis on the All-Star game. Make it worth something. Make it something that the players need. Like, maybe not necessarily home court advantage, because I do disagree with, having other players basically be involved in something that you as a team have worked together all season. And now, because of one exhibition showcase, you do or don't have home field advantage. But I feel like the NBA, which is the league offices, are made up of people a lot smarter than I am. I feel like they have the ability to come up with something that could rejuvenate it for the fans. But I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. Maybe they can call up to the show and they can give me some of their ideas. I think that'd be a great phone call, one that would be unexpected. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the ratings for NBA All-Star Weekends have never been higher, and I'm just crazy. But I know that I won't be tuning in, and I know that when I speak to sports fans all around the Las Vegas area, I know I'm not in the minority. So, hats off to the NBA. They got their showcase this weekend. They're going to get their All-Stars. They're in the Big Apple. They're in Madison Square Garden, but we'll see what happens. I think it needs a shake-up in the next couple of years, but we'll see. Could be a fun weekend. But I think that it's definitely hurting the ratings for the NBA. This is the Sport Buffet. We are live on Aristocrat Sportsnet. If you want to give us a call, once again, the number is 702-475-5946. Once again, 702-475-5946. Also, check out aristocratsportsnet.com for all of your sports information. We also have podcasts of the shows. Also, the Aristocrat is broadcasting the Aristocrats show, which is fitting for the title. John Sirocco, the CEO of the Aristocrat Sports Network, has his own show called The Aristocrats on, I believe it comes on 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. in the Pacific. So if you're near a computer, definitely check him out on his show. They definitely provide some sports knowledge that from a little different view than we have here on the Sport Buffet. I like to think of it as beer can water cooler talk. I definitely enjoy their show. They're very lighthearted and very fun to be around, and proud to be friends with John Sirocco because he's a good guy. So, also let's move into a situation where as a young fan, I hate to see this happening, but as a realist and a sports fan that lives in today, I'm starting to see the writing on the wall. With Tiger Woods, it's real scary to think that the greatest golfer of my generation and potentially of all time might not even be, in the top 100 in the world. I understand he's ranked in the 60s right now, but I mean, he doesn't play like he's the 60th ranked golfer in the world. He doesn't play like he's the 100th ranked golfer in the world, and he knows it. And I think this is a good move by Tiger to step away from the game. Hopefully, he'll be able to swallow his pride, put his ego aside, and I'd love to see him get back with Hank Haney or Butch Harmon and get back to the glory days. His swing coaches, get back to the glory days that made him famous. Get back to that ferocious nature that he had on the course. I understand, he may not have been the greatest sportsmanship player on the course. He may have been one too many F-bombs, but you know what? He sold ratings. He was dominant. I understand that many people think that his dominance came from the fact that he was a little less than monogamous than most men in America. But you know what? If that's what it took for him to be dominant, he has nobody to apologize to except for his wife for that. And I think that he needs to, I think he really needs to take this time off and reassess who he is, who he was, and who he wants to be going forward, because I'd hate to see, this be the it for Tiger. I mean, 2008, he won the U.S. Open on one leg. It was such a historic victory for the ages, watching it, with the Monday playoff beating Rocco Mediate. It was just something that you can't really forget because of the dominance that Tiger Woods was. Even when he was less than 100%, he was still such a driving force in the golf world. And I know the golf world is better when he's good, kind of like the NBA is better when the Lakers and Celtics are good, kind of like the NFL is better when the Cowboys are mediocre, let's say. But yeah, Tiger Woods has definitely got to reassess himself and reassess his life at this situation, because I really think it's more than golf at this point. I really think that he's tried to have this, he's basically had this falling out where his personal life was just spewed all over tabloids and ESPN, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what? I mean, it takes a strong man to be able to even show your face after, something like that, especially in this world. But, like I've always been a Tiger apologist for that sense, in that nature, because I think Tiger has nobody to apologize to except for his wife. He didn't hurt me. He didn't cheat on me. He didn't cheat on you. So, you don't deserve an apology from Tiger. The only person that deserves an apology is his wife. And we do have a caller calling through on the air. We do have a caller. Yes, we do. And caller, where are you calling from?
I'm in Georgia.
Georgia, what's your name, Georgia?
Paul.
Paul, how's it doing? How you going? Welcome to the Sport Buffet. What's on your mind?
Thanks. Yeah, man. I'm with you. I live in Georgia. I live not too far from the best golf course in America and possibly the world. So I kind of wanted to just say, I'm a huge Tiger fan growing up, and it's hard for me to realize that this guy's at the end of his rope, which he is.
Now, do you think he's at the end of his rope because the talent's not there, or do you think that he's just not the same golfer mentally that he was 10 years ago?
I don't think that the mentality is going to affect someone like Tiger, someone who's been dominant and is that competitive at everything he does. I just think maybe his age, and he's starting to deteriorate a little bit. He started to go away from what made him Tiger, and that's, from everything. It's a trickle-down effect, like you said, from the coaches. And, who knows? The littlest tweak in golf could totally sabotage anybody's game.
Sure. I mean, golf is probably one of the hardest sports, in my opinion. And I'd say it's almost as much mental as it is physical, because hitting a ball in the woods could tarnish a round, and it could tarnish you for the next 3 or 4 holes. And 3 or 4 holes is usually what makes a tournament sometimes, And Paul, let me ask you this, in regards to Tiger. I ask people this when I talk sports to them, especially when the topic of Tiger Woods comes up. You talk about being a Tiger Woods fan. You talk about being, growing up with him, watching him, especially from the proximity that you are to one of one of the courses that he's dominated over the last 15 years. What do you feel is necessary for him to overcome this situation, or should we just say, thanks for the memories, see you on the Champions Tour?
I think it's the latter. I think his heyday's over. I don't think he's going to be competing for any more majors. I think the glory days are far behind him, and I think the next time we're going to see Tiger dominating a tour will be the senior tour.
Right on, Paul. Right on, Paul. Hey, we appreciate the call. I got one more question before I let you go here. I know you're from Georgia, and are you a basketball fan at all?
Oh yeah, man. Gotta love my Hawks.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Hawks, you got 4 All-Stars in the game, and the Hawks have really been the mantra this season is kind of like the old Spurs teams, where we don't really have All-Stars. We have a collective unit of one All-Star team. But it's nice to see them being recognized for their efforts this year. What are your thoughts on their the rest of their season and what they can do in the playoffs?
Well, all I'm going to say is, not going to get too analytical because your people probably don't give a damn about the Atlanta Hawks. But all I'm going to say is between Budenholzer, Teague, and Millsap, the Hawks are going to be making a deep run in the playoffs.
That's good to hear. Hey, Paul, man, we appreciate the call. Call back anytime. You're more than welcome here on the Sport Buffet on Aristocrat Sportsnet. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, buddy.
Take care. That was Paul out in Georgia. We appreciate the call. If you want to get your voice heard and be a part of the show, once again, our phone number is 702-475-5946. That's 702-475-5WIN, WIN. Once again, let's go back into that Tiger talk. I mean, like you said, we got Paul. He said that the Champions Tour is not as far as we'd like to think it is, and I think part of me doesn't want to realize it, but I think Paul might be right in that aspect. You don't see Tiger, dominating. You don't even see Tiger making cuts anymore. I mean, last 9 tournaments, 3 cuts, 3 missed cuts, 3 withdrawals. I mean, that's not Tiger. Tiger missed 3 cuts, back in his heyday, he'd missed 3 cuts in 8 years. So it's not like Tiger Woods is, dominating the tour. And, as bad as I want him, and I'm a Tiger apologist. And if we talk off the air, if we talk on the air, I will defend Tiger because I believe that, I didn't see Jack and I didn't see Palmer. So I don't like to make comparisons based on players I've never seen. And so Tiger Woods, in my opinion, is the best golfer of all time because that's the one guy I've seen with my own 2 eyes. I've seen him dominate. And frankly, looking here at 2015, the guys that he's playing now are the guys that are in my shoes. They grew up to Tiger Woods, although they come at it from a different angle. They're competitors, especially they're golf competitors. So, Tiger doesn't scare them like he used to scare the guys. Tiger had more of the fear of the unknown, let's say back in 97 through 2007. The fear of the unknown was with Tiger. If Tiger showed up on the course and Tiger wanted to beat you, he'd beat you. No problem. You were playing for second. So, nowadays, the question really is Tiger going to show up? Is he going to make the cut? Hell, is he even going to make the 9th hole of the first round? I mean, you never know with Tiger. That's the problem nowadays. And trust me, he blew up my fantasy golf picks last weekend by withdrawing. So I don't know what to say to Tiger to make him try to swallow his pride, set aside his ego, and get back with Harman or Haney. But I really hope something changes soon because Tiger Woods needs golf like golf needs Tiger Woods. All right, well, I've said my piece. If you want to call into the show, once again, the number is 702-475-5946. We are the Sport Buffet on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. If we're also putting out an APB on our host, Matt West, if you've seen him or if you know of his whereabouts, please have him come into the studio. If not, oh well, we'll trudge on. No big deal. Once again, this is the Sport Buffet with Matt West on the Sport Buffet Radio Network. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to check out our new website. One of our newest sponsors, Rank Sports. Rank Sports is your #1 service for all your sports handicapping needs. Once again, check out ranksports.com. That's RANCSPORTS.com. Also, follow them on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter.com/RankSports, Facebook.com/RankSports. That's again, RANC Sports. All right, well, let's move on to a topic that obviously, even in the off season, everybody can get on board with this. And if you are listening and you have a comment on the NFL, please give us a call. Like I said, 702-475-5WIN, 702-475-5WIN. Let's talk about a guy who, let's face it, he's been probably one of the ultimate team players. And I know most of the NFL and most of the people who've watched the NFL and most of the GMs who would love to have this guy. Larry Fitzgerald is potentially leaving Arizona if his contract can't be restructured. I know he's a high-profile player with the salary cap space that maybe the Cardinals could use to bolster up a backup quarterback or some of the holes that they needed to fill that they just couldn't overcome, last year with all the injuries they had. But basically, President Michael Bidwell of the Arizona Cardinals has said that the team's priority is to restructure Fitzgerald's contract, but it takes two to tango. So we're waiting kind of on Larry Fitz to see where his thought process is. And if I'm Larry Fitzgerald, I think it may be time to go, because I think that you are in a stable of receivers in a city that has a very big unknown at quarterback. I mean, don't forget, we got Carson Palmer, who is coming off major knee surgery, and I believe he's in his late 30s. Without looking at his birth date, I believe he's in his late 30s. Fitzgerald's scheduled to make $16 million, which for any player that's not a quarterback, that's a high number for somebody who's not putting up 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns like Calvin Johnson and Antonio Brown. So 16 million is a big number, and I think the Cardinals' immediate decisions in the offseason will revolve around Larry Fitz's contract situation. I know they've been working hard to not lowball him, because Larry Fitzgerald has brought so much attention to the Cardinals. He's kept his mouth shut. He's been a good sport. He's been a good team player in the face of, frankly, in my opinion, the negligence to get him a top flight quarterback. So, but let's look at the writing on the wall. Fitzgerald's he's 11 years in the league. He's 31, and I would say due to no fault of his own, his production has declined over the last few seasons. This year he had 784 yards and 2 touchdowns, which, like I said, $16 million for 784 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's just not. Those don't equal out in the NFL. You're not going to make $16 million consistently and produce 702 touchdowns. It's just not going to happen. So let's see what happens in the open market with Fitz. I think that if he end up cutting him, I think that he's not going to be waiting long on the free agent market. So. Obviously, being biased, I'd love for the Patriots to scoop up a guy like that. Bill Belichick finds a way to get him at maybe a $4 or $5 million cap. Also with the Cardinals picking up the tab on some of it as well. You're talking potential dynasties with LaFell, Gronk, not Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, and Larry Fitzgerald. Oof, that's a dangerous wide receiving core. So I know for fans in Arizona, they're not going to be thrilled about hearing somebody like Larry Fitzgerald, leaving. I know they got Michael Floyd, they got John Brown, and they have potential to draft a wide receiver here in the upcoming draft, which is a very deep class of wide receiver. But when you got a guy, especially when you look back in the days when you had Anquan Boldin and Larry Fitzgerald, basically whatever quarterback you had, you throw it up, and they're going to go get it. But it's just not the case nowadays when you have Drew Stanton and Ryan Lindley. That was just I almost you felt bad watching those guys, and you could see the internal frustration on Larry Fitzgerald's face. But for a guy of his class to not say anything for the last 3 years, it's pretty incrediable. And that's a guy that basically embodies the Patriot way. So that would be an interesting sign, in my opinion. I think that staying in the NFC West might be an option, and potentially Seattle. I know that Fitzgerald is, like you said, he's 11 years into his career. So if money's not the issue, championships might be. So I think that Seattle could be a possibility. They don't have the greatest wide receiving core. He would be an instant upgrade, and I think he would be an instant number one receiver up in the Pacific Northwest. So that would be an interesting acquisition if he were to leave Arizona. Also, I think he would be good in a spot where he could mentor a young guy, and I think Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers, would be interested if they lose Vincent Jackson. Should be interested in Larry Fitzgerald to play alongside Mike Evans, who, along with Odell Beckham, were two of the best wide receivers in the rookie wide receivers in the NFL last year. And I think that Evans' ceiling is just sky high, and he's only going to get better. And I think that he might be a little immature. So I think that bringing in a guy like Larry Fitzgerald would definitely be beneficial to Mike Evans. And I think that he can do some good in Tampa Bay. And now that they've got Josh McCown out there, it's pretty clear that they're going to be searching for a quarterback, or they're going to have Mike Glennon, which may or may not be beneficial to Larry Fitzgerald in terms of stats. But like I said, it depends on where Larry's mindset is. I know he's made his money, so if his mindset is to mentor, I think Tampa Bay is a good spot. Like I said, if his mind's on that ring, I think Seattle's a good spot. New England's a good spot if he so chooses. I think that those are three prime destinations for Larry Fitzgerald if he's due to leave Arizona. Another guy I'm interested to see what happens with is Ndamakong, the defensive tackle for the Detroit Lions. I'm interested to see if he's intent on staying in Detroit, or if he's going to try to take his talent somewhere else. I know he's expressed interest in signing with Seattle. Does Seattle have the money to sign him after what they're going to do with Marshawn and Russell Wilson? Who knows? I'm not a capologist, but I can't really figure out how those caps work with all the contracts and keeping it under $100+ million. But that's like I said, that's above my pay grade. So Ndamakong, a few places I think that he would definitely thrive. I think if Fitzgerald is due to leave Arizona, I think Arizona would be a prime spot for Ndamakong to land, because that defense is already pretty damn formidable. And I think that Ndamakong would only bring a lot more intensity to that. Now, I would hope the intensity isn't stepping on players or kicking them in the groins or, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's kind of like the Richie Incognito thing. He's a pain in the ass when he's on the other team, but you'd kill to have him on your team any day, in my opinion. So Ndamakong, I can see that a top potential destination is Arizona. They had, the number 2 rush defense in the league last year, and you put a guy like him along with Darnell Dockett, who's coming back off of knee surgery, to plug the middle. With Patrick Peterson and Cromartie potentially on the outside, if he doesn't leave, you're talking the NFC West is not missing the beat. Also, I think Ndamakong would be a really good fit in Dallas. Dallas, obviously, we talked last year about how they needed defensive help and where they were going to get it from. But, I'd say Dallas was pretty content. They held their own, in my opinion. And I think that Dallas had a pretty average defense, but it wasn't great, wasn't bad. But I think Ndamakong, a guy like that, would definitely be an upgrade for Dallas in the sense of, run stopping with, plugging up the middle, and you got guys on the outside who can cover Brandon Carr, et cetera. I think that Dallas's defense is really what was their hindrance in the playoffs and late in the regular season. And I think he would be one of the players they need to secure not only another division title, but also secure possibly a first-round playoff bye and or a home field advantage in the playoffs. I think Ndamakong is that much of an impact for a team. Another place I could see him, but it's a lot less likely, is Chicago. And I know they've got cap problems, especially with the number that they pay Jay Cutler. But, Chicago's very, very weak on defense this year. And after losing Henry Melton, you could definitely see the holes that they had in their defensive schemes. So I think Chicago, it would be really tough for Detroit to lose a guy, and then it would be even more of a letdown if he went to a division rival and had to see them twice a year. I think that would be just devastating to the Detroit Lions, who, frankly, are building something. Hopefully, if they can keep the players and the nucleus they have, I think they're definitely a strong contender for the next few years. But if they lose Ndamakong to Chicago, that would be definitely a big blow, not only on the field, but I think mentally to them, because I think that Chicago could use a guy like Ndamakong to start to rebuild this defense with, under the new coaches. John Fox, I know, is a defensive guy, so I know that he's definitely interested in a guy like that. Adam Gase is going to handle the offense, and I think Adam Gase is a guy that could potentially be good for Jay Cutler. But I mean, how many times have we said that this guy could be good for Jay Cutler? I mean, we had Mark Trestman the last 2 years, the quarterback whisperer, and that didn't work. So can really anybody get through that thick skull? But Ndamakong, I think, would be, definitely an instant upgrade in the NFC North, which, if he did that, that could be probably the step they need to overtake the NFC West as the toughest division in all of football. So, I mean, Ndamakong is another big free agent that is worth keeping an eye on. So, well, if you would like to call the show, this is the Sport Buffet. We are live on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. If you see our host, Matt West, tell him to come back in studio. He must have gone out to get donuts or something. But 702-475-5WIN, 702-475-5WIN is the number to call. We are, once again, the Sport Buffet on the Aristocrat Sportsnet, sponsored by Rank Sports, your number one source for handicapping needs. Visit ranksports.wordpress.com. Rank Sports, that's RANC sports.wordpress.com. Also visit our site, www.thesportbuffet.com. We have daily updates. We have articles from Matt West, myself, and a couple of other contributors to the show. Also, I'd like to announce that here in about a month, I would say tentatively the date's scheduled for March 19th, but we will have our yearly Sport Buffet baseball preview roundtable, which I'm always excited about. That's always a fun time every year. We've been doing it for 5 years straight here on the Sport Buffet. And every year, I think the conversation just gets better and better. And you can hear that live, or you'll be able to stream that podcast. Check out our podcast. Our podcast on the website, aristocratsportsnet.com, and also on thesportbuffet.com. Once again, our number to call the show is 702-475-5WIN, 702-475-5WIN. If you have a take, email us at sportbuffet@gmail.com. Make sure it doesn't suck. Appreciate that. So, anyways, we're going to keep moving on here. We talked Larry Fitzgerald. We talked Ndamakong. We'll talk some more free agents here as the offseason goes on, as we're getting prepared for draft and you get prepared for the first round of cuts and then the June 1 cuts. There'll be lots of free agents on the market, so it'll be an interesting offseason. Let's stay in the NFL, and in my opinion, a kind of a head scratcher, I would say. Mike McCarthy has, I guess, agreed, or let's say, been forced. I don't know what the true definition of it is, but he is basically relinquishing his play calling duties in Green Bay, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea, bad idea. I'm not sure about it at this point. My gut reaction says I think that's a bad idea, because I think that the Packers organization is really, really jumping to a lot of unnecessary conclusions based on the last 5 minutes of the NFC title game. I think the Packers, obviously, a loss like that's going to stick with you a while, but I don't think the Packers organization should kind of cut off their nose to spite their face. I mean, McCarthy and Rodgers have been such a great tandem the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I mean, currently, as far as active quarterbacks go, I think McCarthy's turned Rodgers into, if not the top quarterback, at least the top 2, top 3 quarterback, in my opinion, in the opinion of the Iceman. And I'd like to know what Matt West says if he ever gets back, but no big deal. The Packers, they're a good franchise, and they're a smart franchise. But I think that whoever's making this decision, initially my gut says that I don't think that it's the right one. And who knows, they may bring in an offensive coordinator or somebody, an offensive, play calling specialist that proves me wrong. But I mean, I think Mike McCarthy is well versed on offense. I think his offenses and his stats have shown that he's capable of leading this offense to great things. And I think he's capable of leading this offense to a Super Bowl if their defense, which I think is actually the more suspect of the two units, if their defense is able to keep them in games. Because their defense is, let's face it. I mean, they're not the strongest. We're talking about the Cowboys defense last year being a very, very weak link in the NFL. I thought the Packers defense for the majority of the NFL was definitely their Achilles heel. I mean, you look at games like the Falcons game on Monday night when they're giving up almost 40 points to the Atlanta Falcons and things like that. Giving up 16, 23 points in 5 minutes. In the NFC title game, I understand that the Seahawks are a dominant team, but in my opinion, offensively, they're not that dominant. So I think between special teams and defense, the Packers beat themselves in that NFC title game. I really don't think McCarthy was really the situation, the problem. I think he was a lot more of the stalwart than the Achilles heel for the Packers. So I'll be interested to see what becomes of that. It says they're handing the duties to Tom Clements, who I guess has been promoted to associate head coach, and he's been with McCarthy since he came to Green Bay in 2006. I guess he has been the de facto offensive coordinator, but I mean, if Mike McCarthy, if this guy's the offensive coordinator and Mike McCarthy's calling plays, what's really the necessary need to have a guy like this, on your staff for the last, 5-6 years? I guess they're promoting everyone. Receivers coach Edgar Bennett is going to replace Clements as offensive coordinator. I mean, I need to dive in more into the NFL to really feel that I understand. I mean, I always felt you have a coach who handles day-to-day, handles the team as a whole. You have offensive coordinators who handle the plays, and you have defensive coordinators who handle the defensive schemes. But if you have an offensive-minded coach, a la John Gruden, et cetera, Brian Billick, guys like that, I really didn't feel like an offensive coordinator was necessary. But maybe I'm incorrect in that statement. But if a guy's calling plays, I feel like that's the guy who's the offensive coordinator. So we'll see. I mean, Clements probably, maybe this is just kind of a smokescreen, Mike McCarthy saying I'm handing off play callers. So maybe he's taking a little pressure off himself. I mean, I don't know, but you see him on the sidelines basically every game with the sheet in front of him. So it makes me kind of wonder what Tom Clements has been doing as the offensive coordinator for the last 3 years. I mean, when you're in the booth during a game, if Mike McCarthy's calling the plays, I mean, are they discussing plays before they run them? Or is he just kind of sitting back and, having a butterfinger watching the game? I don't know. So Clements has play calling experience. He was the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills in 2004 and 2005. He said he really didn't see this move coming, but he's not really surprised by it. So he's more excited. He thinks it's a great opportunity. But, Mike McCarthy, correct me if I'm wrong. Call in 702-475-5-WIN. Once again, 702-475-5-WIN. Call in and let me know. If I'm wrong, if I'm completely off base, let me hear it. Sport Buffet, we have a take, but we'd like our listeners to have a take too. I think this is a poor move, and I think that I'm scared to say it, but I think that there might be a problem with it, kind of almost like the same as the Jim Harbaugh theory. Once you hit such a pinnacle, you're expected to get back to that pinnacle. I'm wondering if anything less than a Super Bowl appearance next year for the Packers is going to be doomed to failure. It's scary to say, but is Mike McCarthy passing off these duties because he could potentially be coaching for his job next year? I don't know. We may find out more in the 2015 season as it goes on. I think that unless Aaron Rodgers, unless nothing's changing, but if this guy's going to implement his own wrinkles, it may take time. Now the receivers, Rodgers has that connection with the receivers, and I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. But if there's communication breakdowns, if there's a lot more terminology if being added to this offensive scheme, who knows? Do we know? My question is if Tom Clements is going to come in and run the same offensive plays as Mike McCarthy, what's the point in even Mike McCarthy relinquishing the duties of play calling? I guess I'm just baffled by this. And the only reason I see relinquishing duties is if basically you're coaching for your job and you're basically trying to focus on other aspects. Maybe McCarthy's going to try to focus a little more on learning about the defensive schemes and improving his defense. And who knows? I guess there's more to come out of this, than we know as of right now. they're going to come out and tell you, like I was looking to see, if this had to do anything with the Seattle game in the NFC Championship. They say no, but I mean, if I have a feeling Mike McCarthy's going to have a much more invested interest in special teams coaching this year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, basically, he came out and I quote, "I will split my time equally with offensive, defense, and special teams." Obviously, with my past duties, I did not get to do that. It's a change and an opportunity for a number of guys on the staff, and I'm excited about the improvement we'll make with these changes. Yeah, see, I think he's saying all the right things, but it wouldn't shock me if next year, if they don't make at least to the NFC Championship, it wouldn't shock me if Mike McCarthy is coaching for his job. And so when you in 2015, late 2015, 2016, if he's not around on the Packers staff next year, you can look back to this podcast or look back to this live stream and say, that Iceman, he knows what he's talking about. All right. Well, we are going to take a short break, 2-minute break, and I will be back with the Sport Buffet. In the meantime, hang on to your seats. Feel free to give us a call, 702-475-5WIN or 702-475-5946, or email us sportbuffet@gmail.com. Once again, that is sportsbuffet@gmail.com, and we will be back. And welcome back to the Sport Buffet on the Sport Buffet Radio Network. We are coming to you live on the Aristocrat Sportsnet. Check them out, www.aristocratsportsnet.com. Our live podcast feed is available there. If you want to check out the podcast at a later date, obviously, you can go to www.thesportbuffet.com, www.thesportbuffet.com. We've got about 15 minutes left in the show. I'd love to get some input from you guys if you want. 702-475-5946. Once again, 702-5WIN, or email the show, sportbuffet@gmail.com. We'd appreciate your take, as long as it doesn't suck. All right, well, let's wrap up the show with an interesting topic. Seems like it comes up every year, but I think it's a little more fitting this year due to the fact that we have a new MLB commissioner, Rob Manfred, obviously taking over for Bud Selig after Selig has decided to step down, which may be good or may be bad, depending on your views of Bud Selig. However, this is about Pete Rose. And Pete Rose is definitely an interesting cat because I'm of the opinion, and I grew up, some of my family lived in the Ohio area, and growing up, I went to a few Reds games when they played at Synergy Field, Riverfront Stadium, and Pete Rose is beloved. Let's not sugarcoat that or get around that. Let's tell it like it is. Pete Rose is beloved in Cincinnati, and I think he's beloved throughout baseball. I don't think this whole gambling thing with Pete Rose is as big as Bud Selig likes to make it, to be. But that's up to him. I'm of the opinion, let the writers decide, let the fans decide, let the players who he played with decide. Because I'll tell you what, I don't think betting on sports had anything to do with his performance on that field. And give me a compromise. You want to keep him banned from baseball in the terms of day-to-day operations or activities or being involved. Okay, fine, but don't ban him from the Hall. I think it's time to lift the ban from the Hall and let the Hit King in. If I could have my hat thrown into the ring, I would say let's let the Hit King in the Hall of Fame. I think it's time. And Manfred, I think, needs to listen to this, and I think there'll become a point where he needs to decide on that issue. And I hope he does the right thing, which may not, be the right thing in some people's mind, but the opinion of the Iceman, I think that the right thing is to let him in the Hall of Fame. And I was convinced, to be honest with you, Selig was going to let him in, that kind of as his farewell decision, if you will, farewell pardon, as Bud stepped off into the sunset. But that didn't happen. So, Pete's got to try again. I'd love to see Pete's name on the ballot. I'd be interested to see how many writers vote for him. I mean, you have steroid guys who are being voted for on the ballot now. So, I mean, if steroid guys were such a problem and created such an issue in your league, and you're still voting for him for the Hall of Fame, then I think you got to let Pete Rose. You got to vote for Pete Rose. And 4,200 hits, there's nobody. That's got to be unanimous. I mean, I know that, even Pedro Martinez, this year, and Randy Johnson, and, even some of the all-time greats never got unanimous because somebody always had to be that guy. But you can't be that guy with 4,200 hits. You could not vote for him, and obviously your clear-cut intentions are going to be that, I'm not voting for him because of the gambling. And you know what? Whatever. You may be one in the bevy of writers that are going to be available to vote for him. I think he'll have no problem getting the 75% he needs to get in. We just need to get that ban off and get him in. The other question becomes is now, once you're Hall of Fame eligible, your Hall of Fame eligibility begins 5 years after you retire. Well, Pete Rose retired, a long time ago. I'm not 100% sure of the exact year, but I want to say it was in the late 80s, or the early 80s, excuse me. And, does his Hall of Fame clock, is it expired because of when he retired? Or should it start at zero because this is, it would be the first year he's eligible on a ballot? I mean, I could see Rob Manfred kind of following in Bud's footsteps and saying, okay, well, you're eligible, but your statute of limitations is expired. And I think that would be almost the ultimate. That would be more of a slap in the face, in my opinion, than what Bud Selig has done by just keeping him banned. And I can't see Rob Manfred losing so much public sentiment that early into his tenure. But hey, who knows? I'm not sure what's going on through his brain. But I think Pete Rose deserves to make his case, and I think that Pete Rose will get an opportunity to state his case. And I think that when that happens, I think that Pete Rose should really team up with a marketing company to almost, for lack of a better word, put the pressure on Manfred to say, hey, look, potentially I'm the greatest, contact hitter of all time. And now that I listen to that sentence, potentially doesn't even belong. I am the greatest contact hitter of all time. 4,200 hits. I know I keep speaking that number, but that's amazing. I mean, here we are celebrating a guy like Jeter over 20 years, just barely peaking over 3,000, and we're talking about 4,200. I'm not sure that record would even be sniffed in today's baseball age with the farm systems and the amount of care that's given into these players, these high-profile athletes, and the amount of days off that they have. I mean, you want to talk about a guy, the guy's nickname is Charlie Hustle. I mean, the guy ended a person's career in the All-Star game, incidentally, but he ended a man's career. That's how hard he went in an All-Star game. Tie this back around, talking about the NBA All-Star game to begin the show. How we talk about how they don't play defense. They barely even try to swat at balls or block shots, but Charlie Hustle played every single game as hard as he could, is the best of his ability. And I think, to be honest with you, I think he did the same thing when he was managing. And I believe him when he says he bet on baseball, but he didn't bet on the Reds, which, me being in Las Vegas, there's obviously different moral issues, or my opinions in that perspective are for another time. But I feel that the Hall really is just, it has a gaping hole in the Hall of Fame without Pete Rose. I mean, it almost is the same with Barry Bonds. I mean, Barry Bonds hasn't tested positive for steroids, yet he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. He's the all-time home run leader. I mean, a true testament of power and contact and hand-eye coordination, and you're not going to let the hit king and or the home run leader in the Hall of Fame? I mean, baseball's doing the little things a little ass backwards, if you ask me. I mean, I understand, and I'm going to get calls from the purists, and I'm going to get emails from the purists. Oh, don't cheat my game. You don't belong in there if you cheat my game. Well, prove to me that Barry Bonds cheated. I mean, I can see the physical aspects of him. Yes, it leaves doubt, and obviously that's all you need is doubt to be in the mind of a skeptic or a cynic or a person who's just looking for a reason to disrespect you. I mean, yeah, we can take a look at Barry Bonds' head size over the the course of his career, but prove to me that he tested positive for steroids, and I will end this discussion on Barry Bonds. Prove to me that gambling on baseball, if you're Pete Rose, helped him hit 4,256 baseballs, for a base hit or better. Prove to me that when you prove to me that he's tested positive for steroids, and when you prove to me that his gambling on baseball attributed to his success on the field, I'll end the conversation. But in my opinion, Pete deserves to be in the Hall. Barry deserves to be in the Hall. Roger deserves to be in the Hall. If you're going to vote for him, put him in. There's people that vote for him. It's a part of the game. You can asterisk it. You can do what you need. You can preface. You can put disclaimers. Put Rose's bus in the Hall and say, he received a ban from such and such time to such and such time, for gambling on baseball. I mean, it's not like it's not common knowledge. I mean, it's not like we don't know about Barry Bonds and all the Balco steroid trials. It's similar to the Patriots. Once the news gets out there, if you're guilty in the court of moral and public opinion, it doesn't matter. And frankly, for that, I think the writers ought to be ashamed of themselves. If you've proven somebody guilty, which It's not the way we do things in our country. You're innocent until you're proven guilty. So Barry Bonds, Pete Rose. Pete Rose is obviously guilty, but he's not guilty of on field. If you want to keep him banned from baseball, we're talking about Pete Rose, from a day-to-day operation standpoint, fine. I got no problem with it. You know, I'm sure he wouldn't either. I'm sure the thing that keeps him up at night is not being in that Hall of Fame, because I'm sure from an early age, all he thought about was being the best baseball player he could be and getting to Cooperstown. So let him have it. Don't do it posthumously. That's just bad taste. You know, don't wait till Pete Rose dies and lift the ban. I mean, he's 73. I mean, at best, you got 15 years. I understand it's a long time, but it'll be here before you know it. Let Pete Rose enjoy being in the Hall of Fame for some time. Let him enjoy having that tag next to his moniker. Hall of Famer Pete Rose. Hit King Pete Rose. All-time hits leader, Hall of Famer Pete Rose. All-time home runs leader, Hall of Famer Barry Bonds. You know, we recognize Barry Bonds as the all-time home runs leader every day in baseball with 762. We don't recognize Hank Aaron anymore as the all-time home runs leader. We recognize Barry Bonds. We recognize Pete Rose as the all-time hits leader in baseball. So if you're going to recognize his achievements, knowing full well that what he did to get him banned from the game had nothing to do with his on-field performance, you can't have it both ways. It's the same thing with the NFL. You can't sit here and try to stop all these, vicious hits and then make posters of them or sell them on NFL hits videos. You're basically creating such a double standard. And, far be it from me, and I'm sure the MLB is not really listening to my podcast, which if they did, that would be awesome. But we'll get there. We'll get that for them. But I'm just asking you, Rob Manfred, just give Pete a shot. Let him explain himself. You obviously know the story. You obviously know what Pete has said. But I think it's time. Let the guard down, let the gate down. Let Pete walk into Cooperstown. Hey, that rhymes. Anyways, it's time to wrap up the show. We appreciate you guys listening. Once again, you can always check us out podcast form on thesportbuffet.com. That's www.thesportbuffet.com. We also are available on Twitter, twitter.com/sportbuffet, and on Facebook, facebook.com/sportbuffet. Also, I'd like to thank Rank Sports, the #1 site for your handicapping needs. Visit them on ranksports.wordpress.com. Check them out on Twitter, twitter.com/ranksports, and facebook.com/ranksports. That's RANC Sports, RANC Sports. This has been another presentation of The Sport Buffet on the Sport Buffet Radio Network. For Matt West, I am the Iceman, signing off. Have a great evening.